Mom said. You're just wasting your life with that business. And rolled her eyes. 2 weeks later she asked for help and I said, Sorry, I'm too busy running my company. The words came out colder than I expected. Not loud. Not angry. Just final. Like the last period in a sentence that had taken 10 years to write. And the thing is, I didn't even plan to say it. I didn't rehearse it or think it over. It just slipped out, quiet and steady. Sorry, I'm too busy running my company. Then I hung up. No explanation. No follow-up text. Just silence. It was a strange kind of silence. Not the kind you regret, but the kind that settles over you like a warm coat after a long, bitter storm. But maybe I should take you back a bit, back to the garage. To the smell of solder and thermal paste, the sound of fans spinning and hard drives clicking. That garage was where it all started. Where I started. It wasn't glamorous. I worked off folding tables and second-hand shelves, the kind you'd find in a closing-down Blockbuster. I fixed broken screens, revived dead laptops, built custom gaming rigs that made teenagers light up like Christmas trees. I'd finish a full workday at my retail job, scarf down cold leftovers, and head to the garage until 3 a.m. Some nights, I slept there. Just me and the blue LED hum of a machine that wouldn't boot. But every time I'd mention my work to my mom, she'd scoff. Still wasting time in the garage? She'd ask, not even looking up from her crossword puzzle. You should be doing something real. Like your sister. Ah, my sister. Christina. The financial analyst. The pride of the family. Had her own office, wore heels that clacked across marble floors. She made PowerPoints and got bonuses and was everything I wasn't. I was the garage guy. The kid who didn't grow up. The one. Chasing a fantasy. So I stopped bringing it up. Stopped hoping for encouragement. My wins were mine alone. Like when I landed my first big client, an IT firm that needed monthly maintenance on 24 machines. I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd tell her about it. That night during dinner I did. I still remember the way her eyes narrowed. How she stabbed a green bean like it had insulted her. And then, right as I said the words, "They signed a 6-month retainer," she rolled her eyes. Rolled. Her eyes. In front of everyone. Christina giggled. My uncle chuckled awkwardly. And my mom? She didn't even acknowledge what I said. She just muttered, "Well, hopefully it'll keep you busy." For a while. I chewed through the rest of my dinner like it was cardboard. I smiled when I said goodbye. But something inside me shifted. I didn't need her to believe in me anymore. I just needed to prove myself right. 2 weeks. That's how long it took for the shine of that family dinner to wear off. I was elbow-deep in a water-damaged MacBook when I got the call. It was early, light coffee still brewing early, and when I saw Mom flashing across my phone, I almost didn't answer. But habit is a hard thing to break. "Hello?" Her voice was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of voice she only used when something was wrong. "Hey," she said, like we hadn't just ended our last conversation, with her barely masking her disappointment in me. "Hi," I replied, wiping thermal paste off my fingers. "Everything okay?" Silence. Then she said it. "I was wondering if you could help me look at something." I frowned. "Look at what?" "My bank account," she muttered. "I think something's off." I paused. That wasn't like her. My mother ran her finances like a military drill. Every dollar tracked, every receipt filed. For her to say something was off? That was code for something being very, very wrong. I drove over that evening, already suspecting what I'd find. Her house was unusually quiet. No candles. No soap operas playing in the background. Just bills. Everywhere. Envelopes with bright red stamps. Letters from credit card companies. Mortgage notifications. And then I saw the balance in her checking account. $247. She had maxed out 3 credit cards. Her mortgage was 2 payments behind. And her rainy day fund. That had dried up months ago. "What happened?" I asked. She waved it off, trying to play it cool. It's just a little tight right now. Your brother was supposed to help with some things, but he's been busy. And Christina's got her own stuff going on, you know. I didn't say anything. Because I remembered. I remembered the speeches. The lectures. The way she'd smile when talking about them, and sigh when I walked into a room. And now here she was. Looking at me. The disappointment. The embarrassment. The garage guy. For help. I stared at the spreadsheets, the overdue balances, the quiet panic behind her forced composure. And for a second, just a second, I felt something like sympathy creep in. But it vanished fast. Because I remembered every single time she told me to grow up. To stop playing tech guy. To go get a real job like my siblings. I remembered how she'd laughed, when I said I wanted to build my own company. Like it was some schoolboy fantasy, not the hours I spent grinding while my friends partied and my coworkers settled into safe, beige careers. Now, the siblings with the real jobs? Nowhere to be found. And the golden child? Apparently too busy to pick up her phone. I folded the final letter and placed it back on the table. What are you asking me for, Mom? I said it gently, but she flinched like I'd slapped her. I'm not asking for anything, she said quickly, proud reflex kicking in. I just thought, since you're doing well now. I mean, that retainer thing sounded impressive. There it was. That retainer thing. She still couldn't say the word. Company. Still couldn't bring herself to call it what it was, success. I stood up, sliding my phone back into my pocket. I've got a call in a few minutes. A client in Atlanta. I paused. Sorry I can't stay. She blinked. But I thought maybe you could look into some options with the bank or... I'm too busy running my company, I said. The same voice I used when finalizing deals. Calm. Controlled. Not spiteful, just factual. Her eyes widened. Like it was the first time she'd heard me speak like that. Like an adult. Like a man she didn't quite recognize anymore. I walked to the door, and she didn't follow. She just stood there, arms folded, mouth slightly open, like she had something to say but couldn't find the words. So I left her with the silence. That drive home? I don't even remember the turns. Just the feeling, this odd mixture of heaviness and freedom. Like I'd finally stopped dragging a weight I didn't realize I'd been carrying. It wasn't about revenge. Not really. It was about being done. I pulled into my driveway, the soft glow of motion sensor lights spilling across the concrete. The garage door opened with that low mechanical hum, and there it was, my workshop. My business. My proof. Rows of organized tools. Machines mid-build. Orders ready for shipping. All of it, mine. No investors. No lucky breaks. Just years of sweat and solder. I leaned against the workbench and let the silence wrap around me. No one telling me it wasn't good enough. No backhanded compliments. Just the subtle buzz of a power strip and the scent of circuit board resin. That night I worked late. Not because I had to. But because I wanted to. And for the first time in a long time, it wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It was about finally proving myself right. The next morning, I woke up to 6 missed calls and 3 texts. From her. Can we talk? I didn't mean it like that. I really need your help. I didn't answer. Because sometimes silence is the loudest thing you can give someone. By the end of the week, the messages started changing tone. Less polite. More desperate. Then came the guilt trips. I'm still your mother. You're not seriously going to let me lose the house, are you? Family helps each other. That's what I taught you. And each time, I just stared at the screen. Not angry. Not even sad. Just tired. Tired of pretending she hadn't made it clear, year after year, who mattered in our family. And who didn't. I didn't need to reply. Because that version of me, the kid who would have dropped everything just to earn her approval, he was gone. I got a call from my sister Christina 2 days later. Mom says you won't help her, she said, skipping right past hello. She's in a really bad place. I kept my voice level. So help her. A pause. I've got my own bills. You know that. Funny. I had my own bills too. Back when I was getting laughed at for building a business. She sighed. This isn't about pride. No, I said. It's about memory. And I remember everything. Click. I didn't expect to feel good after that call. And I didn't. I didn't feel victorious or vindicated. But I felt clear. I finally saw my family for who they were, and myself for who I'd become. And that was enough. I think what struck me the most wasn't the desperation. It was the entitlement. Like the past didn't exist. Like the years of dismissal could be erased with a single favor. She wanted me to sweep it all away because the world she counted on, the one where her real job, kids had it all figured out, was falling apart. And the one kid she'd written off? He was the only one left standing. I kept thinking about the moment she rolled her eyes at that dinner table. It wasn't just an eye roll. It was every time she looked through me instead of at me. Every snide comment. Every time she told someone I was just tinkering when I was grinding 16-hour days. Every birthday she skipped because Christina had a work event. Every phone call that ended with, "Well, maybe one day you'll grow out of it." People say success is the best revenge. It's not. Distance is. The kind of distance where you stop hoping they'll come around. Where you stop needing their congratulations. Where you build a life so full, so steady, that when they finally look up, it's too late. And you're not looking back. It wasn't like I didn't want to help her. I want to be clear about that. If she had called me a year earlier, heck, even 6 months earlier, and asked for a hand, I probably would have bent over backwards to make it work. That's who I was. That's the son I used to be. But something changed when I saw those envelopes spread across her table like open wounds. And it wasn't just the debt or the mess. It was the assumption. The quiet, unspoken assumption that I would show up. That I should show up. Not because I was capable, but because I owed her. She had taught me to see success as something you apologize for. Something temporary. Something suspect. I could recite her greatest hits in my sleep. Money doesn't grow on dreams. People like us don't run companies. You're embarrassing yourself. And the kicker, the one that always stuck. No woman will want to marry a man who spends all day fixing broken toys. I used to sit in that garage with aching joints, smudged glasses, and hands that never stopped trembling from too much caffeine and too little sleep, and I believed her. I truly did. I thought I was broken for wanting more. But then the company started to grow. Slowly, then fast. A few Facebook posts turned into client inquiries. Custom builds turned into recurring orders. Before long, I wasn't just fixing things, I was designing systems. Networking setups. Data recovery solutions. Gamers, entrepreneurs, teachers, they trusted me more than I ever trusted myself. And somewhere along the way, I stopped needing her voice in my head. That day in the garage, after she first called me, I sat on my stool in front of the test bench and let myself feel everything I'd buried over the years. I remembered being 16, showing her a motherboard I had just successfully reflowed after hours of trial and error. I had this stupid grin on my face, excited like a kid with a new toy. She barely looked up from her newspaper. "That's nice," she said, flipping a page. "But maybe you should also look into community college. Something realistic." I nodded and went back to work. Back then, I thought maybe if I got better, faster, smarter, she'd care. But she didn't. Not even when I landed my first client. Not when I registered the LLC. Not when I filed my first year of taxes with revenue that beat her precious Christina's starting salary. That's the thing. You can forgive someone for not believing in you. But it's a lot harder to forgive someone who made you stop believing in yourself. So when she called again that night, voice brittle, words stumbling over pride, I didn't feel joy. Or power. I just felt still. "I just don't know who else to call," she said. "You raised 2 other kids," I replied. "They've got good jobs. Offices. Benefits. Suits. The kind of life you always wanted from me." She was quiet. I didn't mean to make you feel lesser, she finally whispered. But she had. For years. You don't have to mean it for it to hurt, I said, softer than I expected. It still cuts the same. I could hear her breathing through the phone, the quiet panic rising again. I never thought I'd need your help, she admitted. I nodded, even though she couldn't see it. You didn't. You thought I'd never have it to give. And that was the truth of it. The irony hit me hardest that Thursday morning, sitting in my home office, what used to be a corner of my garage. Sunlight streamed through the blinds, catching on the polished edges of a new water-cooled tower I was customizing for a client in Seattle. It was sleek, powerful, a work of art. The kind of project I used to dream about back when I could only afford scavenged parts off Craigslist. My calendar pinged, 2 back-to-back consultations, a supplier meeting, then dinner with a startup team that wanted to bring me on as their IT partner. It was, by all measures, a good life. And yet I sat there, phone in hand, staring at the same message from my mother I hadn't replied to in 3 days. I'm scared. Please. 3 simple words that yanked at something deep. And all I could think was, where was this fear when you were laughing at me in front of a dinner table full of people? Where was this vulnerability when you made me feel like I'd let the family down by daring to build something with my own hands? She wasn't scared when she called me a hobbyist. When she told my aunt at Christmas that Ethan's still doing his little machines. But now, with bills swallowing her whole, with Christina citing financial overextension, and my brother Drew flat out refusing to call back, now she remembered the sun in the garage. The backup plan. The last resort. I wasn't surprised. People like her never believed a business was real until it came with a business card and a suit. But I wasn't angry either. Not anymore. I was clear. I remembered when I started this thing, the months I couldn't even afford heat in the garage. My breath visible, while I soldered motherboards wearing gloves with the fingers cut off. Eating canned soup 3 nights a week just to save for an SSD upgrade. Nobody saw that part. Nobody wanted to. Certainly not her. She was busy telling everyone how proud she was of Christina's promotion to regional. Or how Drew was so bright, always has something in the works. Despite the fact that he lived rent-free and hadn't held a job longer than a season. Me? I was just Ethan. The tech guy. Tinkerer. Dreamer. Not the entrepreneur quietly clearing 5 figures a month. Not the guy who paid his bills early, had no debt, and built a client list through nothing but word of mouth and ridiculous work hours. I could have bailed her out. 1 wire transfer, and most of her problems would have faded. But I thought about what that would teach her. About what it would teach me. I imagined her at lunch a week later saying, "Well, thank God Ethan finally came through." As if I hadn't been coming through for years. Just not for her. Helping her wouldn't be generosity. It would be a lie. A lie that she had always believed in me. A lie that what she did, and said, and didn't say, didn't shape me into someone who had to claw his way back to self-worth. I didn't owe her that lie. So I picked up my phone and finally replied. 1 message. Just like before. Sorry, I'm too busy running my company. And this time, I meant every word. Then I put my phone on silent, opened a new client ticket, and got back to work. That evening, I sat in my kitchen with a warm cup of coffee and a to-do list that never seemed to get any shorter. But for once, I wasn't in a rush. I let the quiet settle. Not the lonely kind of quiet, but the kind that follows clarity. Peaceful. Earned. I thought about the last 10 years, how many times I had sat in this same silence, but back then it felt hollow. Like I was shouting into a void. Building something no one else believed in, except me. And maybe not even me, half the time. There's a loneliness to chasing a dream that your own family thinks is a joke. It's not the kind that comes from being alone in a room, it's the kind that settles in when the people who are supposed to know you don't. When you share your victories and they smile like they're humoring you. Like you're a toddler who just learned to clap. I remembered a Christmas 5 years ago. I had just broken even on the business, finally. For the first time, I didn't owe anyone money. I wasn't rich, but I was afloat. I handed out gifts that year I'd actually bought with money I earned from custom builds and repair contracts. When I handed Mom her gift, a new tablet she'd once mentioned in passing, she smiled, paused, and said, "Thanks, but you didn't have to. You should save your little profits." Little profits. And now, those same little profits were the only thing standing between her and losing her house. There's no joy in that. No triumph. Just a strange ache, knowing that your success will never be enough to change their version of you. But here's what finally made it click. I had been trying to rewrite the wrong story. I thought success would rewrite who I was in their eyes. That if I'd built something strong enough, undeniable enough, they'd finally see me as more than a disappointment. But they weren't the ones I needed to convince. I was. And I had. The next weekend, Christina showed up at my shop. I could see her through the security cam before she rang the bell, wearing her blazer and that stiff posture that meant she was about to do her version of a peace offering. I buzzed her in but didn't pause my work. She walked through, looking around like it was the first time she realized this wasn't just a hobby garage anymore. There were workstations, storage systems, inventory logs on screens, whiteboards covered in strategy notes. She said nothing for a while. Then, quietly, "This is more than I thought." I didn't answer. Finally, she said, "Mom's in a really bad place." I paused what I was doing, turned to her. "And? I don't know," she admitted. She's never seen you like this. I guess none of us have." "No," I said. "You've all seen me. You just never looked." She winced at that, and maybe for the first time, I saw her falter. Not out of guilt, but out of recognition. "Would you ever forgive her?" she asked, not meeting my eyes. I thought about that. Forgiveness isn't about saying what they did was okay. It's about saying it doesn't own you anymore. I had already forgiven her. But that didn't mean she got access. There's a difference. "I already did," I said. "But she doesn't get to ask me for what she wouldn't give me when it mattered." Christina nodded slowly, then turned to leave. At the door, she paused. "She still says you're the stubborn one." I smiled. "She's not wrong." They stopped calling eventually. Not because they understood, but because they realized I wasn't going to bend. And honestly, that silence felt like healing. I kept building. The business grew. I hired 2 part-time techs, started hosting weekend workshops for teens who wanted to learn the same things I once had to figure out alone. I never told them not to dream too big. Some nights, I still sit in the garage, now my office, and I think about that boy who once begged for approval at a dinner table. I think about how long it took to realize that you don't need anyone's permission to succeed. My advice? Build your life so strong that their disbelief becomes irrelevant. Let go of needing their apology. But don't hand them the keys to something they never helped you build. Some people only respect what they can take from you. And some things, your peace, your dignity, your hard-won freedom, are no longer for sale.